All right, so we start talking to the property managers a little bit more. They, for whatever reason, thought when I said that only my mom was going to be in the house, they heard no one's going to be in the house. So they decided, no, we don't do any sort of construction with people in the house. They're like, your personal belongings are still there? And I'm like, yes, because we're going to live there for, another 3 weeks when we get back. And they said, no, they're not going to do construction. They will do construction when we're fully moved out. I didn't want that to happen because I wanted the construction to be done before we moved so that when we did move, they could clean it up, take pictures, and get somebody renting in there so I had some income. But no, they decided they're going to wait until everything is moved out, then do the construction after we're gone, then clean it up, then take the pictures, and try to get somebody in there. Which is, I understand, I get it, but it's basically costing me a month's worth of rent income. And instead, I'm paying that mortgage when I don't live there. And that's where we are right now with that. But I'll talk a little bit more about that when I actually talk about financials. So then that was already bad. I had been applying for work. So had Hannah. We've both been applying for jobs basically since like March 15th. No. It was like April 1st. That was probably closer to when I started applying for work. Saying, hey, I will be available starting on June 10th. That was the day that I told everybody I can start working. We were going to officially move in the 3rd. I figured a week to kind of get the most part of the apartment or house or whatever settled. And then I can start working on that Monday because I kind of need that paycheck. That was what I was telling people. I kept on getting answers from people telling me, you're like 2 months early. What are you doing? Don't apply to us. We have no interest in you right now. We need somebody to start on Monday. Call back, when you get up here. That was basically what I was getting most of the time. However, I did have 3 scheduled interviews for when we were going to be here in Portland. Remember, we were here April 27th through May 10th. So about a month before we were going to move. Apparently that was still not enough. That was still too much time. That wasn't close enough. But we'll get into that. So we land on Monday. That's when we make it into Portland. My flight landed somewhere around like 12:40. And I had an interview at 2 at an ophthalmologist, right? That makes sense. I worked for an optometrist. Why not work for an ophthalmologist? It's kind of a step up. They wanted me to be an office administrator, which was basically I ran the place, which is basically what I was doing at the optometrist, so it made sense. Like, all right, sure, I ran an optometrist. I can run your ophthalmology practice. So we get off the plane, and we take an Uber into Vancouver, Washington, which is just on the other side of the river from Portland. It's not like across state. Portland's basically on the edge of Washington. So just north across the river, and we were there. We ended up getting there, I believe, about an hour early because we didn't realize that not only was our flight going to be on time, our baggage came just fine. More about that. Everything worked out exactly how it was supposed to. And I wanted to give some wiggle room for, some problems to happen. And they didn't happen. So we showed up at this ophthalmology office about an hour early. And I figured, because Hannah's with me, right? I've been wearing my interview clothes all day. Hannah's not. She's wearing we're going to go to like an Airbnb type thing all day. So It's very different between us, but we're trying to hang out together. And I figured, okay, well, this place is supposed to be like in a giant strip mall. She can find a place to sit outside while I go in and talk for about an hour with them, and then we can get something to eat, right? Because we were both hungry. We'd been up since 5:30 in the morning or something. But I get there. The person that's supposed to interview me is out to lunch. They're like, oh, we actually had you down for, a half hour after we had told you. And I'm like, I have it on my phone. Already this is not a good sign. But eventually, and one of the other issues, there was nowhere to sit in the strip mall. There were no benches outside. So Hannah and me had to come into a place where I'm interviewing for a job with our luggage, with Hannah clearly not in professional stuff because we didn't think this was going to happen, not professional clothing. She's wearing, camo and a crop top or something like that. I don't know. It definitely, she was embarrassed that she had to be there in those clothes. I was fine with it, but she wasn't. So we wait they tell us a half hour later, and we're just hanging out in the waiting room, waiting for the person that's supposed to interview me to come back from lunch. When she finally shows up, she says hi to me and says, oh, well, why don't you guys go to eat now? I'm like, no, let's do this now. Let's do the interview now, and then we'll eat afterwards. That probably was the bad decision because it didn't take an hour. It took 2 hours for them to interview me. They took me on an extended tour of the entire place because apparently, even though the person that was going to interview me was there, the doctor himself took a later lunch and he wasn't going to show up for another hour. So I took an extended tour of the entire place. She explained everything to me. She got some information out of me. And then the doctor finally showed up. The doctor then interviewed me for a little bit about pretty much the same stuff. He seemed really enthusiastic about me. He seemed like I was going to be basically a savior of his practice, that I was going to work for him for a long time. I was going to do this, and this. I mean, he had long-term plans for me already laid out 5-10 years down the line. The office administrator, which is the person that I was being interviewed by first, also the position that I was trying to get, didn't seem as enthusiastic about me because at the optometrist where I worked, I didn't have direct supervisory experience. In other words, people didn't report directly to me, which was not the case. I'm like, no, they report to the doctor, but I'm the one that double checks all their work. I'm the one that holds them accountable, but I don't necessarily have immediate authority over them. Only the doctor has that because we're small. There's not a strict hierarchical chain in an office of 7. It's just the person at the top and everybody else. Right? It's all loose. But they weren't accepting. She wasn't accepting that. She didn't seem too happy with me. But the ophthalmologist told me that, okay, so you guys just came in. Why don't you take the rest of the week off? And then I'll have you come in sometime next week and we can show you how this office works. And I'm like, all right, that's great. I have a job. I landed off the plane and got a job. So then we started doing some apartment hunting, right? So yeah, apartment hunting was the next thing on our agenda. So we started trying to find a place for us to live. It didn't start off that great. We found a place out in what's known as Gresham, Oregon, which is east of Portland. And Portland's pretty spread out. So, that was a good 20-30 minutes away from where we actually wanted to live. So we found a place there. We walk in. It's unremarkable to the point that I barely remember anything about it other than that it had brown carpet, just like the one that we were getting removed from the house back in Anaheim. So it didn't also seem like the queen bed wasn't going to fit in the master bedroom. And when I even asked, I'm like, we have a queen bed. They're like, oh yeah, that might be a little too big. And I'm like, then you have a small apartment. Like, this is not our fault. It's standard sizing. So that one didn't work out all that great. I think we did that on the first day. So then what we did is we crashed at Hannah's stepsister's place. Now, she lives out in Tigard, which is like southwest of Portland. Once again, about a half hour from where we wanted to be, but it's a place for us to crash. So we ended up crashing there. That was not fun. I have no problems with Hannah's stepsister. She's very nice. It was very nice of her to open up her little apartment for us. But that's the thing, is it's a little apartment. It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and she had 2 other roommates. So there were 5 of us in the place. Hannah ended up sleeping on the living room couch, and I slept right below her in an air mattress. And because there were 3 other people in the place, they kept on getting out and going to work at like 5:30, 6 in the morning. So that was always nice. And they had dogs, which were very nice dogs, but not at 5:30, 6 in the morning when I'm trying to sleep on an air mattress. So wasn't always the best, but we had a place, which was nice. We had a place to stay. So we keep on apartment hunting. We're also doing some job hunting for Hannah. We're trying to find some places for her. I won't go too much into detail about those because I don't remember too much about those. We also had a rental car right after my interview at the ophthalmologist. We went and picked up a rental car. It's this one I don't mind telling you about. It was a Chevy Sonic, which I had never heard of before, but apparently Chevy makes a Sonic. It was not a good car. As soon as I got in, I felt like it was really light and fragile. Like if I drove too fast, like the body might just fly away. It also took forever to start and took forever to stop. It had a lot of momentum that I had to overcome for a very light car. It's a very small car. I think it was technically 4-door, so I think it was a sedan, but it felt like it was smaller than a coupe. Like it felt fragile and tiny, while at the same time the engine couldn't really handle it. Like it was a really heavy engine that could barely move itself type thing. So it was not a good car. And then anytime we tried to turn, it felt like the car was going to flip over. Like if I took a turn at like 20 miles an hour, which is pretty standard, that's not that fast. But if I made a right turn at that speed, it felt like the entire car was going to flip on me. And for a car that was as wide as that, I shouldn't feel that way. But it definitely felt like everything shifted. Not a good car. I later found out that it was actually a remodeled Daewoo, that Chevy had bought the rights to Daewoo, and they remodeled one of the Daewoo models into a Chevy Sonic. So I highly suggest you do not get a Chevy Sonic. They start at around $12,000, I think. Like, they were ridiculously cheap, and it's still not worth it. Just spend the extra couple $1,000s if you're going to get a car and get something that makes you feel like you're not going to die when you're in it. So that was fun. But Hannah and I ended up going to, some nice restaurants. We ended up going to a couple nice places, during our downtime. We ended up going to the falls up in the gorge, which is gorgeous. The biggest one is Multnomah Falls, but we ended up finding Horsetail Falls that we liked a little bit better. We found a place to kind of hang out on the river, which we heard it was called South Waterfront, but that's not the one that people were thinking of. It's the one that we went to is a little bit further south than the main waterfront. But overall, we had a good time, but there was a lot of stress along the way. So then we found our second apartment. The second apartment was in southwest Portland. So it was actually in Portland. It's in a little place called Hillsdale. That's the name of the neighborhood, because Portland is so spread out that it has over 100 neighborhoods that you're supposed to keep in mind. But Hillsdale is where this one was. It's a 2-floor one with the entrance being at the middle of the stairs. So when you walk in, you go upstairs and there's part of the apartment. You go downstairs, there's another part of the apartment. And we fell in love with it immediately. We absolutely loved it. It was going for something just above our price range, but it was something that we felt we could do. So we put our name in and kind of hoped for the best on that one. So then I think we had a couple more interviews for Hannah. I had a couple more interviews. I ended up doing a lot of interviews with staffing agencies. Staffing agencies are not fun to deal with. This was the first one that I had done in person. They wouldn't tell me what the name of the job was, and I'm too scared to ask. People assume that if you applied for a job, you memorized like everything about it. That is not the case with me. I ended up applying for over 200 jobs. I don't remember yours. Please give me some insight. You know what I mean? But all she would tell me was that she was from a company, I think it was Emerald Staffing. I think that was the name of the company. It was out in Lake Oswego. Anyway, we drove out there early in the morning. I went down, sat down, realized it was a staffing company in a large office building, and quickly realized while I was sitting there which job it was, because she told me that if it worked out, the pastor would call me back. And I'm like, oh, right, this is the business office manager job for the Catholic Church. I normally wouldn't have applied to that one. I don't know if you guys know it about me, but I was born and raised Catholic, which means I have a special hatred for a lot of the things about Catholicism these days. But we're not going to get too much into that one. Anyway, the only reason I applied is because they paid really well. Like way more than I was anticipating getting. So I ended up talking to her for a good 45 minutes or so. She said that I was a great fit for the job. She was going to go talk to the pastor, highly recommend me. She emails me the next day to let me know that the position had already been filled. So that didn't work out. That happens a lot with staffing agencies. I ended up doing, I think, four phone interviews with staffing agencies and 2 in person. I'll tell you the results of all of them right now. None of them said that outside of this one for the Catholic Church, none of them said I was a good fit for the job that I applied for. They wouldn't tell me why. And they said they would keep my resume on file should something else turn up. And I never heard back from them again. It was so weird. If you're a company, I highly recommend not using a staffing agency. And if you're looking for jobs, I highly recommend you don't apply to stuff with staffing agencies. Even though they said that I was not what they were looking for in a certain position, I can guarantee you I was. I fit every single one of their qualifications. But then there were hidden qualifications that apparently they didn't tell me about that I didn't qualify for. I get the feeling that there was something wrong with me as a person that they didn't like, but I don't know what that is. And at that point it's just speculation, so there's no point in really going into it. But yeah, staffing agencies, I would stay away from those as much as you could. Let me think some of the other ones. I ended up doing an interview to run a golf pro shop. On a golf course, the pro shop, they needed somebody. It was real hot, fast paced there. We ended up going, and once again, I show up about 5 minutes early. I always try to be a little bit early for interviews. That way I'm never late. As long as I'm 5 minutes early, it's fine. So I show up about 5 minutes early, and I walk in and nobody seems to know that there are interviews going on. I'm talking to people. I'm like, hey, I'm here for a job interview. They're like, who is it with? And I'm like, I don't remember. He said my name in a crowded room over the phone. I don't remember his name. And they're like, is it this guy? And I said, sure. But eventually they get him. He comes down and there's a customer complaint. So he's dealing with the customer complaint. Well, I'm just like roaming around this pro shop, not sure what to do. I ended up waiting for him for 45 minutes. We go to the back. He finally says, okay, sorry about that. Takes me to the side. It's not even the back, really. It's the side of the pro shop. And he's like, I guess we'll just do a makeshift one over here. And he talks to me a little bit. That's the best way that I can put it. He goes, what did you do at your last job? Why do you want to work here? Do you have any questions for me? And he asked me, I had 3 questions ready, right? When you do job interviews, it's a good practice to have questions ready in your head so that you can ask them while you're there. I had 3 ready. I went through all 3. I asked the first one. He goes, that's about it. Do you have any other questions for me? Ask the second one. Answers it. Do you have any other questions for me? Ask the third one. Do you have any other questions for me? I'm like, no, I'm out. That was all I had. I don't have any more questions. And he's like, all right, well, I have you're the second interview that I've done. I've got about 30 or 40 other ones. I'll let you know. And I'm like, I didn't get this job. Are you kidding me? I told you I'd never golfed before. I'm never going to get this job. So yeah, that didn't work out. One of the times we did go to a winery for a job for Hannah, because she worked at a wine shop, a winery back in Southern California. So we were thinking, it'll be an easy translation over there. But it took like an hour and 20 minutes to get there. So already we were like, I don't know, this is kind of way out there. It was on the vineyard. But while she was doing the interview, I had an interview to try to run kind of the fleet of a moving company. And he wanted to do that in a basically a FaceTime interview. I had to download an app called Zoom for it. I still get emails from that. I need to unsubscribe. They're not good. But we ended up doing a phone interview just way out there. And I talked to him for, once again, about 45 minutes for an hour. He said, I will let you know. It seemed like I was good. It seemed like I was a good fit for that one. I'm not familiar with the industry, but, I'm a quick learner, unless it's a platformer. But that doesn't apply to work. So I talked to him for a while. He says he'll let me know. I start looking for jobs again 2 days later, and he's reposted the job. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess it didn't work out. I ended up emailing him like the next week, and he was just like, yeah, we've decided to go with somebody else. And I'm like, bullshit, you just posted the ad again. But whatever. He didn't like me for whatever reason. I think one of the issues was also that people weren't sure that I was going to move to Portland. It's a big risk for them to hire someone that doesn't even live in the area with the promise that they'll move over there. But like, I was up here, you know what I mean? That's why I was up there, to try to find a job.